What's up, everyone? Welcome to This Day in Philly Sports History for January 7th, 2025. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Tuesday edition of the podcast. It is Tuesday, so that means it's time for a little positivity / motivation. And this is our first one of the new year. Hopefully, you can take this and go run with it into the new year. Maybe not a resolution, so to speak, but just a way to make yourself better. And it's not necessarily a quote, more of just sort of a rant. But I hear a lot, well, this is the way I was brought up, or this is just the way my family did it, or my culture, or whatever. And I do agree with this. You're shaped by your surroundings. You're shaped by your experiences. But at the end of the day, it's still no excuse to rely and do bad things or go into bad habits or things like that. You still need to learn from your experiences, from your surroundings, grow and get better. It's kind of like the whole nature versus nurture type deal where people say, oh, well, people were born this way, or people, that's just the way they are, versus, hey, this is where this person grew up. This is what this person's culture is, whatever it could be. I firmly believe in the nurture portion where you are shaped by your surroundings, your experiences, and that's why you see siblings and people in the same family have completely different outcomes on life. And so many times we hear it, oh, it's not my fault. It's just the way I was raised. I don't know any better. Well, I think, first of all, with that, you obviously know better or else you wouldn't be saying it. But I do think that only goes so far. You have to grow and be better, learn from your mistakes. And I think it works both ways, too. On the other side of the coin, I think in our society today, we're so quick to judge people based on what they do without knowing the full story, knowing their experiences, knowing what their surroundings are, knowing what shaped them. And I think we'd be better served performing and having more patience with people and trying to get an understanding and maybe educate them, maybe have those conversations. I feel like that's something in our society today that's lost, is the art of conversation. There's no debate. There's no back and forth. It's just, you don't agree with me, you're an idiot, move on. And I think that, to me, and I don't want to turn this into a preachy political type thing, but that tends to be where we see a lot of this, people just not willing to talk and just hear the other person. So you are shaped by your surroundings and your experiences, but you need to use that. You can't hang on to the fact, well, I was raised this way, so this is the way I am. No, you go out, you experience things, and then you learn from those experiences, grow, and become a better person. So bottom line, be open-minded with things, show empathy to people, show compassion, do good, and this world will be a better place. So hopefully, as we go into the new year, you can take something from that. And again, just listen to people, have conversations. Don't be so quick to judge. And then on the other side, don't be so quick to say, well, this is the way my parents were this way, so this is the way I'm going to be. No, be your own person, be open-minded, make educated decisions, and learn from your experiences. Again, hopefully you can take that into the new year and learn from it. All right, let's do some quick housekeeping before we get into the episode. Be sure to follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mont on Twitter and TikTok, at Philly Jimbo on Instagram. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont. Continue to spread the word. Good things happening here in 2025. Hopefully we'll continue to be featured in the On Pattison newsletter, so go check them out. And I've been mentioning it. As soon as everything is in place and it's up, I'll let you know when the package for me being the fan of the week will be on KYW News Radio. Very excited for that. But again, just continue to spread the word. If you're enjoying this, likely someone else you know will as well. All right, Sixers. Speaking of not enjoying things, 109-99 lost to the Suns last night at home. No Joe, who was scratched about 2 hours before the game, and then Andre Drummond didn't play either. He was like a last-minute scratch, and they missed both of them. they couldn't shoot last night. I mean, Maxey had 31 and 10 assists. Kelly Oubre, 26 and 11 rebounds. But they just could not shoot. In the first half, they were hanging tight, playing decent defense. And then the Suns just got hot in the second half, and the Sixers just couldn't close it. Paul George looked terrible. Starting to get a little concerned that we may have bought damaged goods there. I know it's early in the season. I know we haven't really seen Joe, and Maxey play together a lot, but starting to get a little concerned that Paul George may be a little, maybe if he's not there yet, he might be closing in on his expiration date. But we'll see. It's still, I don't want to say it's early because it's not really early in the season anymore, but there still is time. So hopefully they can get some of that gelling done. And, I mean, Joe not playing certainly doesn't help with that. But they get a reprieve on Wednesday as Washington, who has the worst record in the league, comes to the Wells Fargo Center. So hopefully that can help right the ship for the Sixers. Flyers are at home tonight against Toronto, finally returning home after that long road trip. Hopefully they can get it rolling as well. And if you needed any reminder that this is a rebuild, they have a goalie problem. And not in the sense that they don't have a goalie. They have a few goalies, and it's hard for any of them to get into any kind of rhythm. All three of them have showed flashes of being decent, but because of injury and things like that. So this is a rebuild, so we need to be patient here with the Flyers. But they have the Maple Leafs tonight at the Wells Fargo Center. Be sure to check out my boys over at the Clashing Conferences podcast. Great things happening with our Sports Fan Network. That is available wherever you get your podcasts as well as on YouTube. And then go to Philly Goat. Still time to get your Eagles playoff gear. Want to gear up for the potential Super Bowl run. They got you covered with all kinds of shirts, hoodies, even the shoes, the bird wings. I'm telling you, I highly recommend them. I'm debating on what my outfit for the game this weekend is, whether or not I'm going to be wearing the bird wings with a Kelly Green jersey or go with the traditional midnight green. But the shoes are awesome. Go to Philly Goat, check them out, and use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off your order. That's phillygoat.com. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off of your order. All right. Let's start with the Eagles. And first, a recap of yesterday's question of the day. I asked you, who was the GOAT of the game? No surprises. 67% of you said it was Tanner McKee. Hard to argue that. He would have gotten my vote as well. All right, time to kind of turn the page. Not really much. Usually I would say let's put a bow on the Giants, but since it was a glorified preseason game, we're just going to let it go. Excuse me as I take a sip of coffee. But we're moving on to the Packers. It's the playoffs, and these teams have played 3 times in the playoffs. Eagles hold a 2-1 advantage there. The 1960 NFL Championship, which we talked about, where Chuck Bednarik said to Jim Taylor, "Hey, Taylor, you can get up. This goddamn game is over." Then the 2003 Divisional Round playoff, that was the 4th and 26 when McNabb found Fred Barnett, which technically I guess that game. NFL playoffs are weird because it's for the 2003 season, but technically the game was in 2004. And I think I made a mistake earlier in the week with one of the Eagles playoff games with that. But it's for that season. So the 2003 Divisional Round, 4th and 26, Eagles win in overtime. And then the 2010 wildcard game, which I kind of mentioned yesterday, that was the Michael Vick game. David Akers missed 2 field goals in that. One was pretty much a chip shot for him that would have changed the whole complexion of the game. He makes both of them. Eagles win. For whatever reason, Vic decided to audible out of a play and throw deep, threw an interception to end the game. But to me, that was a David Akers thing. So those are the 3 times the Eagles and Packers have met in the playoffs. I know a lot of Packers fans were like, well, the last time we were the away team in a wild card round, look what we did to the Cowboys last year. Yes, but that's the Cowboys. So pump your brakes a little bit like on that, Packers fans. The Eagles defense did end up number 1 in total yards allowed this season. I would have never thought that heading into the after the first 4 games heading into the bye. So kudos to Vic Fangio for getting that defense rolling and together. We're certainly going to need that come Sunday. And then speaking of Sunday, Packers have some injuries. Christian Watson is out, tore his ACL in that final game. Jordan Love says he's going to play. I was hearing some rumors that he might have a broken bone in his hand, but I guess he fell on his elbow, had some numbness and lost feeling. After the game, he said he was still not 100%. I haven't heard anything more about it, but he said he'll play. I think he'll play. But again, the Eagles defense needs to really just kind of, without Christian Watson, that's a huge blow for them. So they just need to get pressure on Love and just really play the way they've played all season. And then the other big story, apparently the Saints have reached out asking to interview Kellen Moore. And I have a ton of issues with this. And not because Kellen Moore obviously did a good enough job to warrant getting head coaching consideration. That's fine. Like I don't have a problem. It's not ideal. You never want to see, especially when your team and your offense did well, you don't want to see your coordinators go. What I have an issue with is the fact that teams are allowed to do this during a playoff run. And we saw it with Jonathan Gannon during the Super Bowl. He's supposed to be preparing for the Kansas City Chiefs, and he's interviewing for his next job. That's what I have an issue with. And I get that the teams that are not in the playoffs typically are the ones that fire their head coaches and start their search early. That's why there was Gerard Mayo was fired Sunday night. Doug Peterson was fired early Monday morning because they want to get a head start on this. But I feel the NFL needs to come up with something that evens the playing field out, because it does work both ways. So if you remember, after 2022, the Eagles lost both coordinators, and because they went to the Super Bowl, they were behind the 8 ball because all of the good choices were either hired or in the process of being hired. So I think there has to be something done by the NFL to even the playing field. And not that I'm calling in the professionalism of Kellen Moore here. I think he's a different type of person, or at least seems a different type of person than what Jonathan Gannon was, who obviously was not invested in that Super Bowl. However, we did see it with Matt Patricia. As much as we hail Nick Foles as a folk hero here for winning the Super Bowl, Patricia's defensive game plan in that Super Bowl was terrible, but he had already checked out because he was the head coach of the Detroit Lions at that point. So there has to be something the NFL does to sort of even out the playing field and make it so everybody has the same shot. And I get if your team didn't make the playoffs, you want to get started on a new regime as soon as possible, but don't suck, and you don't have to worry about that. But I mean, like I said, it is what it is. Jalen probably is going to have another offensive coordinator. It just kind of is a testament to him that he continues to kind of produce the way he is. But it's just more annoying than anything. That's what my concern is. The fact that it just doesn't seem right. And I know, like in a business world, if somebody calls me and asks me for an interview for a principal position or another podcasting position, making more money, having more power than what I have now, I'm not going to necessarily put as much into my current job as I would if I didn't have that job or that interview lined up. So it just doesn't seem right to me, and that I think is something the NFL needs to do. Now, I'm saying that from a position of my team has Super Bowl aspirations, and you're messing with the karma and the culture and things like that. If the shoe was on the other foot, screw the Eagles, and I don't care about their offensive coordinator. I want Kellen Moore as my head coach. So I do see the other side of it, but I think there has to be a happy medium in there somewhere. But hopefully Kellen Moore can be a little bit more professional than what Jonathan Gannon was. But that does lead to today's question of the day, because the wound is still pretty fresh from 2022. Are you concerned that Kellen Moore is being approached for interviews heading into what could be a Super Bowl run? Let me know what you're thinking. 267-495-8531. That's the Back to the Future voice and text line. Get your thoughts out on that. Anything else Philly sports related. Again, I think he's a little bit, he seems anyway, a little bit different of a person than that scumbag Jonathan Gannon. But it's still one of those things. It's going to be on his mind. And anytime something else is on your mind, it distracts you from what your job is. It happens all the time. Like if something's happening in my personal life, can't focus 100% on work. If something's happening, it's going to be on your mind. So especially something like this, life-changing, his first head coaching position, it's concerning. But are you concerned about this, or are you more focused on the play on the field? 267-495-8531. That's the Back to the Future voice and text line. We'll have more on the Eagles-Packers. Hopefully we'll be getting some updates on Jalen very, very soon. I did hear someone else kind of confirm what Elliott Shore-Park said about the concussion protocol, that the final step is a practice and how you feel the day after. And since they likely were going to hold him out anyway, that sort of checks out. So likely we won't get an update on Jalen until Wednesday. The other thing to kind of look at is as long as Ian Book is on the roster, that's the telltale sign, because he's that placeholder right now. So if Ian Book is off of the roster, that bodes well for Jalen playing Sunday, which I think he'll play. I think he's fine. I think it's more precaution. It's just we're Philly fans. As much as we want to try to be new Philly, stuff like this is going to creep into our minds. All right, today we get kind of an end-of-the-road doubleheader, and if I had the rights to it, I would play Boyz II Men End of the Road right now, but I don't, so you can just sing it in your head. You're welcome for that. But first, we're going to go to 1980, and on this day in 1980, the Flyers lost to the Minnesota North Stars 7-1 in Minnesota. It was the first time they had lost a game since October 16th, a streak of 35 games where they were unbeaten, which is a North American sports record. Still, I don't know if that'll ever get topped. It's just an incredible thing. But on this day in 1980, the Flyers finally lost a game to the the North Stars 7-1 out in Minnesota, ending that 35-game unbeaten streak. And then in 1995, 1 week after scoring 58 points against the Detroit Lions in the wild card round, the Eagles lost to the Cowboys in the Divisional Round 30-11 in a game that the Cowboys absolutely dominated. Rodney Peete was knocked out of the game literally in the first quarter, which meant Randall Cunningham, the backup, came into play the last three quarters. Interesting story leading up to that game. Randall missed the entire week of practice to be in Las Vegas with his wife for the birth of his son, which was his first kid, by the way. Didn't take his playbook. It was a big story in the papers, Randall not being prepared. But Randall did the best he could with what he had. Again, this was not a great Eagles team. He did score a fourth quarter touchdown in what would end up being his final game with the Eagles, decided to retire for a year, and then came back with the Minnesota Vikings and reignited his career for a couple years with Chris Carter, Randy Moss, and that was just a phenomenal season. But on this day in 1995, Eagles lose to the Cowboys 30-11 in the divisional round, Randall Cunningham's last game, and then in 1980, the Flyers lose to the North Stars, ending their 35-game unbeaten streak. A side note to all of this, on this day, the same day of the... so again, this is another one of those times. It was the 1995 season. This game happened in 1996. So, ironically enough, starting that Saturday night heading into the Sunday was the blizzard of 96. And anybody from the Southeast PA region knows all about the blizzard of 96. Remember, it was snowing all through that game. in between times, having to go out and help my dad shovel, and as he was plowing. But the blizzard of 96 happened on this day in 1996, the same day the Eagles lose to the Cowboys 30-11. Finally today, we've been doing forgiveness for New Year's. We're not doing New Year's resolutions. It's cliche. It's played out. This is another tough one. But we're especially the week of the Packers-Eagles playoff game. We're trying to bring as much good karma to our sports teams as possible. And the best way to do that is to forgive people. Forgiveness, put that good karma out there, that good energy, get the negativity off of your shoulders. And today, we are going to forgive Rich Kotite. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you Rich Kotite is the man, because he wasn't. I do think a lot of the stuff with Rich Kotite may be a tad overblown. I think he gets somewhat of a bad rap. Was he terrible in that 1994 season? Yes. Was he an absolute buffoon? Yes. That 1994 year was the worst collapse, harkening back to 1964 with the Phillies, until the Eagles decided to say, hold my beer, and do something similar last year. But he wasn't all bad, and not quite as bad as we remember him. Was he a buffoon? Absolutely. But if you remember that collapse in 94, 7-2, and then losing 7 straight. Oof. But let's go back to the beginnings with Rich Kotite. As the offensive coordinator in 1990, the offense was second in total yards, led the league in rushing, something that for years under Buddy Ryan, everybody said, we don't have a running game. Our offensive line is terrible. Rich Kotite helped to propel the Eagles to the top rushing offense in the league. Yes, a lot of that was Randall Cunningham running for 942 yards, but Rich Kotite was the offensive coordinator. They were third in scoring. Randall was the offensive player of the year. He was an MVP candidate, won a couple of the organization's MVP for 1990. That was the ultimate weapon year. Obviously, 1991, Rich Kotite lost Randall in the first half of that game against the Packers. Did lead them to 10-6, thanks in large part to that defense, which is the greatest of all time. 1992, they went 11-5. I mean, they were going up against the Cowboys, who were in their prime during this time. Led them to a playoff win. 93, they went 8-8 with some injuries. 1994, obviously, we know the what happened with the collapse. And I forgive him, not necessarily for not for 1990. Because, like I said, he turned Randall around. However, he could not figure out that Washington defense in the wildcard game. So, Rich, I forgive you for not being able to make the adjustments in that wildcard game. I forgive you for the collapse in 1994, which is big for me because I thought that was going to be the year, especially because they beat the 49ers out in Candlestick pretty bad, who ended up winning the Super Bowl that year. I forgive you for saying after the 1993 season, 8-8 is great. Come on, man. You can't do that. But I forgive you for it. I forgive you. I forgive you for the game. I believe it was in 1994 when it was raining. You should have gone for 2, but you didn't because you didn't laminate your game card, and you said you couldn't read it because the ink ran. I forgive you for that. Basically, he was a great offensive mind, but he was a buffoon. He was an absolute buffoon. And Rich Kotite, today, I forgive you for being a buffoon. I forgive you for the ink running on your card. I forgive you for the collapse of 94. I forgive you for saying 8-8 is great. I forgive you for not figuring out Washington's defense in that 1990 wildcard game, which is, by the way, happened in 1991. So I forgive you for all of that. We need all the good karma we can get. This one, to me, was tougher to forgive than Chip Kelly because Rich Kotite was sort of the guy who I thought was going to take over Buddy Ryan, add the offensive piece that was missing when Buddy was building those defenses. But alas, it did not happen. So Rich Kotite, I forgive you. We need the good karma. I feel better. On this day in 1996, the Eagles lost to the Cowboys 30-11 in what would be Randall Cunningham's last game with the team. He would retire for a year before coming back with the Vikings the following year. Also on this day in 1980, Flyers lost to the North Stars, ending their 35-game unbeaten streak, which still stands as a North American sports record. Hard to imagine that will ever be broken, but we'll see. Let me know your thoughts on Kellen Moore. Should we be concerned that he's getting asked to be interviewed for job positions? And added bonus to that, should the Eagles allow him? They don't have to allow him to. It's kind of a dick move to not let somebody get their interview, but you got to keep your eyes on the prize. So what do you think about that? Should we be concerned? And then a bonus, should the Eagles let Kellen Moore go on an interview? I say no. Be a dick about it. This is about the Philadelphia Eagles, not the Philadelphia Kellen Moores, but that's just my thought. We'll have more on the Eagles-Packers as we gear up for the wild card game. Remember, you are shaped by your surroundings and experiences, but you need to learn from them and be better, do good, show empathy, and be open-minded as we head into 2025. Hopefully you can take something from that. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for January 7th, 2025. My name is Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Tuesday. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.